Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. We are now 3 for 3 with busy weeks in a row with over 10 debuts and somehow 3 weeks in a row of actual quality. This was another really good week. Look, I'm not expecting a 4th week in a row of this considering some of the, let's call them new things that are going to be coming through on Billboard in the next week that are really promising, and I'll get to that later on. But you know what? I'm going to relish in this moment. I'm quite frankly stunned at how well these last 3 weeks have held up for me. Quite frankly, it's proving that 2026 is being a genuinely great year. And really considering the consistency recently, I don't really see it getting worse. I'm not going to complain there. And that starts on Hot Dance, where Dracula by Tame Impala is still comfortably at #1, where it looks like the streaming is remarkably stable here and radio is still going up on this one. And considering that it will most likely make the Billboard Hot 100 year-end list, the first time that Tame Impala has ever made that list, despite the fact that several songs from Currents and The Slow Rush should have easily gotten there. Yeah, looking really promising. This might end up being the biggest dance hit of the year. I'm not going to complain. Especially when it keeps back No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe at #2, where even despite some decent streaming, it's not really going anywhere else. Hey, Disco Lines, you want to actually push a new single with all those new contacts that you have from this song's success? I think there's a lot of momentum that's starting to run out here, especially when right beneath it is No Batty Down by Zakai and Slaughter at #3. I mean, we can easily stop this from making a run. Can we please move on like the rest of the world has with this one? But hey, look, a major debut at #4 that's at least showing some promise, and even if I don't expect it will last, it's at least cool to see here for some shake-up. Save My Love by Kygo, Khalid and Gryffin. Now, of course, radio isn't on board with this. Streaming's gonna fall back. Expect this to fall out of the top 5 pretty hard next week, but considering the amount of upwards momentum this has, I can actually see this sticking around, and it's already now Griffin's highest shining song on this chart over Woke Up in Love, and considering it's a much better song, I think we're all better off for it. Then there's the interesting case of I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Aragon rebounding to #5, although realistically that's because of the next forced remix that really is making this song feel like it's going to be on a verge of a collapse soon, and I'm not exactly that upset about it. But likely it was also benefited from the total collapse of Let the World Burn by Chris Gray, Rebel and Cry down to #6, and man, the streaming is not looking good on this at all. Really not a good sign if this guy's going to have any sort of staying power, and considering that streaming's all it has, yeah, not good. Kind of makes the next 2 songs feel a bit more redundant as they both stuck to where they were and are sales-driven tracks, with unfortunately the worst one of All the Things She Said by Harrison at #7. Seriously, we can move on from this. And Turn the Lights Off by Kato featuring John at #8, which may have better sales, but the streaming is not looking good at all with this one. I'm amazed both of these are still here for many reasons, but what likely caused them to stick at their spots was the complete collapse of Victory Lap by Fred Against Skepta and Pluck Boy Max at #9. Now, this doesn't really surprise me considering that there's no real new single to give it a little bit of a stream boost on the side, and considering that Fred Again has now announced that the USB rollout is finally going to calm down, he's actually going to take a well-deserved break. It means that this is probably going to end up being rotated out naturally, and considering that it is a great track, I'm happy that it had the run it did, but seriously, it stuck around way too long. But what likely won't help comes in our new arrival to the top 10, and one that I'm quite frankly stunned is actually here, and it makes the charts considerably better by being here. Just the Way You Are by Milky and MOONLGHT at #10. Look, if you told me that MOONLGHT was going to get a top 10 hit on the Hot Dance charts in 2026, I'm just completely lost for words with this one. This song is excellent, and I'm glad it's getting major traffic around the world, but the fact that it's actually blowing up in the US too is surreal to me. Let's hope it gets higher. I can see it doing that. Now, this would be where I'd be talking about the notable fall-offs that rotated out, and yeah, there weren't really any this week. All of the songs that fell off were 2-week charters that didn't really have any reason to stick around to begin with, and quite frankly, I don't see them coming back. Unfortunate, but you know what, I'm not exactly all that surprised either. And when our big falls are 2 songs that are not exactly surprising, both being debuts last week, with Lights Burn Dimmer by Fred Again and Jamie T at 22, and Shadows by John Summers and Lavinia at 18. Again, not surprising here. And on that note, our jump is Lights Go Out by John Summers at 13. Here because of a remix EP that's going to likely boost up the sales for 1 week and then nosedive. We all know how these go at this point. So wow, pretty pretty short list of movements, so let's get into the 3 debuts here. Starting off nicely with number 25, Beautiful Places by Tiesto and Brieanna Grace.
There goes the way you let me down. It's a different type of sound, yeah.
Okay, so given that Bring Me to Life has really stuck with me as a genuinely gorgeous and extremely well-produced track, that proves that Tiesto's pivot back to more of a trance and progressive house sound has its means of actually doing well, and I'm really thrilled that he actually got somewhere with it. The follow-up was going to be what really tested whether he was actually going to stay there. I mean, I love Bring Me to Life, but it was the sort of track that wasn't really going to last on the hot dance charts, and while it did do really well on Dance Airplay and will make the year-end list for 2026, it was no guarantees that Tiesto would actually stick to that sound. I mean, we've seen other artists try and attempt a new sound and then utterly give up on it. Hi, Calvin Harris. But this looks like a sign that Tiesto is in this for the long haul, because this is also great and I'm thrilled that he's sticking to this sound. The gorgeously spacious mix that really fits that title perfectly, with the mix of strings, pianos, and some really gorgeous vocal samples that absolutely drive this whole track forward, all against the stunning mixing with plucky synths that sound fantastic and really prove that Tiesto's style is absolutely working well in this pivot. I am thrilled that he's gone back to it. It actually works for him quite a bit. And then you also add on some really smooth drops that actually tone this whole song back, which for a mainstream producer like him is really surprising. All against a fantastic vocal performance from Brieanna Grace, who has a sort of cinematic bend to her delivery, as she really does sell the content here quite a bit. Again, fits into this mood quite well, and when she sounds as clear and crisp as she does with some genuinely fantastic vocal range, yeah, I'd like to hear more of her. She actually has a lot of potential. I'd like to see where she goes next. More than anything, it proves that Tiesto is fully committed to this pivot and is not just limiting it to one song that may or may not have underperformed. And when you can seriously tell that he cares, from the fact that this doesn't have anywhere near the same level of production polish that most of his mainstream hits do, and the fact that he's not oversaturating the market with new singles like he did for the last 2 years, yeah, that's a sign of growth. I'll give him credit here. This is genuinely great. Let's hope there's more coming. I'm really on board with this rollout. Number 12, My Jealousy by Vivi Baby and OVG.
It's a scam, I don't wanna be me. This ain't what I want, this is everything I need. No, I don't belong, can't contain my jealousy.
Oh boy, I was waiting for this scene to make its big revival with a massive debut, and man, doesn't it feel like the scenecore scene hasn't really had any sort of mainstream representation in a good bit? I mean, I'm not complaining. I don't like the fact that it treads on subject matter that's genuinely uncomfortable and not in a remotely compelling way for me. And when you have bad production that ages worse the more that this scene goes on, as well as several questionable artists within the scene who live up to that disgusting content by being really questionable people with allegations galore, I mean, it just felt like the scene was self-sabotaging itself, especially with the ongoing beefs between a lot of the bigger names from 2023. There's a reason that it didn't really get any representation last year. I mean, I get how it works for a community that's been really marginalized, especially the LGBTQ community, where a lot of the artists in this scene are part of that community, and really I can understand how this would be a mirror of empowerment for them. I really don't want to take away that from people who actually genuinely face discrimination. If you like this sort of thing, I absolutely understand why, but for me, as someone who's been through some really hard and really traumatizing moments in my past, where a lot of the content from the biggest hits in the scene like Ecstasy and Love Potions takes me to a very dark place with a lot of experiences that I'd rather forget. It gives me an intense, draining feeling whenever I see the scene actually get a big debut here, and that feels a bit unfair in this case because I at least had some expectations for this. I mean, OVG was a name that I've already covered before, with a pretty solid collaboration with Lovely Laurie and Love For You, which was one of the earliest debuts on Dance Pop when the split happened, and considering that the production was by far my favourite part of that track, and OVG has proven to be a really solid producer, I was at least going to be curious if they were actually able to deliver here, and you know what? I'll give this its fair dues. It's actually a pretty decent song. It's the sort of song where it can get a little bit annoying, especially with the choppy mixing style with those beeping synths at the very front of the mix that do not really create the atmosphere that I'm really looking for in this particular sound. But backing it up is a really potent vocal delivery from Vivi Baby, who actually manages to sell this content pretty well, where it's a really credible self-reflection on just how much the jealousy is overtaking her as she sees other people being happy in their personal personal lives, or with the underlying context of her not really knowing what she wants to be. And gee, I wonder why that's such a resonant message in modern times. I absolutely understand the audience that will be all over this, and I can definitely appreciate it for that. Combine that with a shorter runtime that doesn't make this feel as overdone as it could have. You know what? I'll give this credit. It's actually pretty good. Just like Love For You, I don't really see myself listening to this a lot in public for very obvious reasons, but really, if it ends up working for a lot of people, I'd absolutely understand why. And even for me as someone who doesn't like scenecore, you know what? This is pretty solid. I don't mind it. Good track. Number 4, Save My Love by Kygo, Khalid, and Gryffin.
Save my love for somebody else. Go feel what I never felt. I'll save my love for somebody else.
And here's the big one, the song that quite frankly I expected would do massive numbers considering the names involved, and I really wish I didn't have this feeling of dread when I was going into this. I mean, I already didn't like Kygo and Griffin's last collaboration in Woke Up In Love at all. If anything, it's actually gotten worse with time, and Callum Scott on vocals does not sound good singing this at all. And while the modern singles have mostly been good from Kygo, they haven't really given me the sort of things to say, or delivered all the magic that I really felt out of a lot of his earlier material. It feels a little bit flat nowadays for him, and that's a little bit disappointing. And this, yeah, it has that same frustration for me, even if I can at least admit in this case it's pretty damn good as well. Replacing Callum Scott with Khalid is already a massive improvement, and you can definitely tell that he fits over this production well. He's got the sort of warmer, low vocal delivery that absolutely plays into this well. Really the sign of someone who's been dabbling in dance music recently and who sounds extremely comfortable over this production. And hell, the production with the faster tempo and the warmer summer-ready vibes, it does sound really nice. I can absolutely understand the appeal on an instrumental level at least, but that's really all there is to it. It's not really anything new for Kygo. Gryffin barely contributes again, or at least makes it not very obvious where he actually contributed here, and it's just not interesting by any means. And even as someone who likes more Kygo songs than not, I was expecting a little bit more from this. It is very good, I can understand why people like it, but for me, far from any of these artists' best. And now we get on to dance pop, and yeah, I pretty much called all of this happening. Starting with the return to number 1 for Stateside by PinkPantheress and Zara Larsson. And ironically, with both of them getting an individual debut this week, this might be a really good sign that there's more momentum coming. And considering that this is a great remix and has led to some even better songs getting traffic, yeah, this is a huge win for me. And that's ironic because besides that, nothing else happened here. Hypnotized by XG came back at 14, much to my disappointment. And yeah, that just leaves the 2 debuts. Starting off with a welcome surprise for me. Number 15, Girl Like Me by PinkPantheress.
No explanation for why we do this. Are you alright? Are you alright?
So in the aftermath of a wildly viral ice skating performance by Alyssa Liu, which ended up actually using Stateside as one of the songs in that particular performance, hence why that song's blowing up on streaming as much as it is, it was going to be interesting to see whether either artist could actually get something to chart here off the back of those, considering that a lot of the time people actually show some genuine interest off of a viral moment. And considering that PinkPantheress has other songs from this album that ended up doing decently well before Stateside, it could have led to more interest towards the album itself, and yeah, this is the aftermath of that. And even more exciting for me, it happens to be one of the best songs on Fancy That, and I am thrilled that it's actually here. The tight and bouncy house groove that actually plays into PinkPantheress's cutesy aesthetic really well, it sounds really nice. The crowd chanting that surprisingly adds a lot more of an anthemic blend to this mix and absolutely works for the self-empowerment content of the lyrics. Definitely helped by the out of nowhere sample of Romeo by the Basement Jacks, which honestly I'm kind of surprised has actually been sampled multiple times on this album and sounds great in all of them. I'm really happy that that song's actually getting a revival now. And yeah, if you want a song that absolutely proves that PinkPantheress can deliver the dance floor ready bangers that absolutely go off in a live setting, and having heard this song in a live setting, it absolutely does go the fuck off. Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled this is finally here. I don't really know how long it's gonna last once the virality of that performance dies down, but if it ends up getting a second win and actually managing to have a decent run, yeah, I think we'd be all better off for it. But now onto something that absolutely had a run and probably should have debuted here much earlier. Number 3, Lush Life by Zara Larsson.
As if there was no past, doing it all night, all summer, doing it the way I wanna. Yeah, I'ma dance my heart out till the Gonna spend it like no other.
I mean, come the fuck on. What do you want me to even say about this? I mean, I could point out how much of a complete fuck up it was that Billboard did not include this earlier. That's another thing to add to their list of fuck ups that they've had with this chart, which is probably ending up being the most mismanaged chart that they've had in a very long time, if not ever. But honestly, even if this is quite late to this chart, it's finally here, and quite frankly, it's one of the best pop songs of the 2010s and an absolutely perfect representation of what makes Zara Larsson special. I mean, it's just the perfect pop song, tight, well-paced, extremely fun throughout, with the sort of production that sounds really embedded to 2016, but surprisingly has actually aged really well, alongside one of the best earworm hooks of the 2010s, and the sort of thing where I'm absolutely stunned that this didn't have a run initially. And when you have Zara Larsson, who even at the age of 19, back when this song was first blowing up, she has the personality and charisma to absolutely make this work. There's a reason why she's one of the best vocalists in pop music at the moment, and her revival has been long deserved. She's been really good consistently. I don't know how the Americans didn't notice that. I mean, it's honestly the case where this is just completely unfair to the rest of the debuts here, because not only is this probably one of her best ever songs, if not her best outright, it's one of the best pop songs of the 2010s, and the fact that it's getting a revival now and it's actually going to make a run for the year-end list, I think we're all better off for it. Fantastic track. Let's hope that this actually ends up sticking around. Honestly, makes it kind of ironic that the smaller charts don't really have a ton to talk about here. Starting with dance streaming, where we saw a Zara Larsson sweep with Stateside with PinkPantheress at number 1, and in our debuts, Lush Life at number 2. Awesome to see this. And hell, with Midnight Sun up to number 4 as well, yeah, there's more coming. This is fantastic. But now on to dance sales, and holy crap, this was way busier than I expected, with a grand total of 2/3 of the charts being rotated out for new or returning songs. Holy shit. And what's even more surreal is the song that returned to number 1 off the back of that performance from Alyssa Liu, and surprisingly not Stateside, but MacArthur Park by Donna Summer? I'm stunned that this even happened, especially for a song that many consider to be one of the greatest dance songs of all time. It's a case where the song that she used the most throughout her performance ended up being the one that blew up the most on sales. And considering that it's a fantastic track that absolutely deserves all the hype it got, I'm thrilled that it hit number 1. Although, let's be real, it was close between that and Stateside by PinkPantheress and Zara Larsson at number 2. This is just nuts. And more importantly, these led to actual sales support for the other songs from these artists that end up charting this week. In the former case, Last Dance by Donna Summer is up to 11, that's awesome. And in Zara Larsson's case, Lush Life debuted at number 7 and Midnight Sun came back to number 10. Again, massive win. Hell, the viral performance antics actually ended up translating over to Angie de Poitrine, who actually saw both of their 2 songs return this week, with Fabianca at 14 and Mata Zyklek at 15. Again, not a huge problem by any means. These are both good songs. Sadly, the other cases outside of these are not exactly all that promising, with the first being Please Don't Change by Jungkook and DJ Snake at number 3. The song sucked in 2023, it sucks just as much now, even if the depressing context of the fact that this got sales support off the back of literal hate towards Jungkook. I mean, I'll give the army that, at least they're doing it in a good way. And then there's Save My Love by Kygo, Khalid and Gryffin at number 5. Don't expect this to last much at all, and I'm kind of okay with that. And the disappointment doesn't stop, because when we get to our 2 debuts I haven't covered, we unfortunately have to start off with number 13, Free Bird by MOONLGHT.
Hey, won't you fly?
Dreading having to talk about this, and wow, this being the song that MOONLGHT charts with makes me really fucking mad. So for context, MOONLGHT's a producer from Nashville who got a pretty decent amount of popularity off the back of a bunch of house covers of existing songs. Geez, we haven't been down this road before. And ironically, the song that blew him up worldwide was a collaboration with Cyril, utterly bastardizing the classic song from the Lars in There She Goes, and that remix is fucking terrible. And given that this song is from July of 2024 and looks like it's actually going to end up being decently popular on streaming for some ungodly reason, I mean, I wasn't exactly surprised to see it here, considering the original Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd has kind of become a bit of a meme nowadays, and has also been recognized for one of the most impressive guitar solos in music, period. I don't think anyone can disagree there. And hearing this, holy shit, this is awful. The sample vocals sound so tinny and completely out of place on this production, not helped by the song being cut down to 2 minutes, which doesn't even give a lot of attention towards the guitar solo. Couldn't even sell the main fucking selling points of the original track. Well done there. And when you thought that this mix already couldn't sound loud and cluttered enough, this guy decides to throw in a stuttered drop that's not only incredibly intrusive and sounds terribly mixed, it also clashes with the mainly country instrumental from the original, and it just sounds wrong on so many levels. I'm not remotely surprised that in a lot of circles this guy seems to be getting the same level of mockery that Cyril has, and given the questionable talent of Cyril seems to translate over to this guy, yeah, fuck this. I am done giving this sort of shit any further attention, and quite frankly, we can all move on from this fucking trash. Skip this. Number 8, Science by deadmau5 and Stevie Appleton.
Everything I do for you.
And now onto something that's at least looking a little bit better. deadmau5 making his big return with Stevie Appleton. Why not? Now, I admit that I really didn't have the level of expectations that you'd think I would for deadmau5 nowadays. I mean, his prime and interesting moments are long behind him, and a lot of his singles recently have just felt like really disposable progressive house filler that doesn't really stand out by any means at all. And even if I do like a lot of those songs, I can barely remember them after I finish hearing them. They're not exactly memorable nor interesting either. So yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect, considering that this seems to be one of the rare cases of a song that didn't debut on Hot Dance but hit 2 other charts at the same time, and what we got was honestly a little bit better than I expected. Definitely nothing new for deadmau5, and this really didn't need to be almost 10 minutes. It's lacking in the atmosphere to make it really captivating for me. It does feel a bit flat in that regard, but I can't deny that Stevie Appleton's Elderbrook impression over this instrumental does sound really nice, and once the mix actually evolves on the second half, I was surprisingly getting into it a little bit more. I kind of get why it was expanded the way it was. It does make that second half hit a lot harder for me. It definitely feels like more of an interesting version of what Joel has been doing recently, and even if I can't say it's the most memorable or interesting track that either artist has been involved in even this past year, I'll at least take a better version of the formula, especially when it's clear that deadmau5 actually cared about this one a little bit more, and considering that it's his big comeback and actually seems to be having some momentum elsewhere, yeah, good sign. And this is pretty solid too. I'll take it. But okay, before we move on to the final chart this week in Mediabase Dance Airplay, I think it's worth highlighting that big new case that I mentioned at the beginning of this episode of something that's going to be a huge deal moving forward into next week, because Billboard, in all their wisdom, decided to add a new chart to the dance category based off of the global dance airplay charts, which has been run by a company known as Warm, who have been doing this for at least a year or two now, and where it looks like this particular chart is based off of the spins of a combined amount of radio stations across the entire world built into a full 100-song chart. Yeah, quite frankly, it's huge, and I didn't expect this would actually happen at all. Now, as far as I can tell, Billboard's version of this chart will be limited down to 40 songs, just like Dance Mix Show Airplay, which honestly, for a more condensed version of this chart, I think that's actually a pretty smart move. And while I do have many thoughts about how much this feels like a diversion away from actually making some genuinely needed changes to the dance category, seriously, dance pop is continuing to prove to be absolutely useless. The merge back to a normal hot dance chart that's 50 songs long would be extremely welcome right now, but at the end of the day, it's at least an exciting new change that can show some genuinely big songs around the world that don't end up getting traffic in the US, and it's really welcome to see a global perspective on this sort of radio traffic, especially when a lot of the stations that are submitted to this website are actually from the community who follows it. It seems to be a lot more interactive than you'd expect out of a website like this, and considering they seem to use track data technology to actually count whenever a song plays on a specific radio station submitted to them by the fans, yeah, it looks like it's going to be as accurate as you can get, and that is a huge win. Now, as for its inclusion on this show, Okay, I'm at least a little bit conflicted in this one. On one hand, I do want to include it, considering that it would expose me to a lot of songs that I otherwise wouldn't listen to and wouldn't cover on this show. Nice to inspire a bit of variety, especially when it's a global perspective. I'd like to talk about more than just the US radio charts here. But on the other hand, the full version has 100 songs, and it feels like it's going to be overkill, considering that a lot of the time the debuts on those charts reach double digits. So this is where I ask you guys to make the suggestions in the comments about what I should do with this. Part of me wants to include it, and I will find a way to actually make it work into this series, but some suggestions and ideas from you guys in the comments on how an analysis of dance will actually run moving forward, I think that's going to be very welcome, even if part of me is self-aware of the fact that this probably won't end up being the most viewed section of these videos moving forward. I mean, I'm aware of a lot of what happens with the trends on these videos. People tune out before the dance airplay parts. I'm not blind to that. But anyways, please leave those comments down there. I'm definitely going to be looking over them, and I'd like to hear you guys' opinions on what I can do to improve this show moving forward. I'd really appreciate that. But now onto Mediabase dance airplay, and ironic that all this talk is on this week that Love You for Life by Loud Luxury and Emily Roberts actually stuck at #1 for a second week, and with a commanding lead too, as if we didn't need more of this garbage than we actually did. I mean, thank God that Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson looks like it's going to easily get #1 next week. The spins are increasing fast, and it's already overtaken Love You for Life on Mediabase. I'm not going to complain there. And it's already overtaken Love You for Life on All Access as of recording this, so yeah, not going to complain. And that's also factoring in Edge of Desire by Jonas Blue and Maliv at #3, which is also rising pretty steadily on spins. Expect this to have a chance of going to #1 too, and that's a huge win. And even Aperture by Harry Styles at #4, where I can expect that the album will at least give this a little bit of a boost on Mix Show and allow it to hit #1 on Billboard's charts. But considering the, let's say, not exactly great reception towards that album, I don't know how long this is going to last. But hey, it did at least kind of strand Phases by Joel Corey and Abby Flynn at #5, although seriously, at this point, I really am surprised that it's not being rotated out faster. Joel Corey should not have a song like this sticking as long as it is on this charts. It's a good song, mind you, but I'm surprised it's stuck this long. What is going somewhere with it though is thankfully Faded by Hayla and Nelly Furtado at #6, a song that's grown on me even more than I first covered it, and quite frankly, I'm just thrilled that Hayla's starting to get more material charting this high and this well. The quality's definitely been there. But on the opposite end, what isn't welcome, Jamaican Bam Bam by Hugel and Salto at #7. Okay, seriously, can we please stop with this? Thank God it looks like the spins are finally stalling out on this one, because seriously, the last thing we need is this going for the top 5. Can we get rid of it, please? Then there's the odd return of Where Is My Husband by Ray at #8. I mean, again, it's not surprising considering the David Guetta and Hypertone remix is actually doing decently well on radio. That's something that the warm charts have been proving recently, and that's something that you can look at the global dance radio charts and actually see. Again, it has a welcome presence here. But now onto an actual new arrival in the top 10 at #9 that I'm stunned actually made it. Helium by the Chainsmokers and Anna Sophia. I mean, I'm not too surprised considering the Chainsmokers are at least radio darlings at this point, but considering that this is probably one of the least accessible songs from that new EP that they released, I'm kind of shocked that they actually managed to make the top 10, and I'm not complaining, it's a good song even if it is the weakest on that EP. Oh, and What Love Can Do by Bonnie and Clyde at #10. No one cares, let's move on. Thank God Now Falls and Fall-Offs. The latter doesn't really have a lot that's all that surprising, all things considered. I mean, we have 3 songs that are going to easily lock their year-end list spots despite being bizarre, with Not Gonna Be Your Boo by Clooney and Robin S. Hello by Sagala, Leanne and Janita Gandhi. Unfortunately, that one's actually stuck around long enough to make it despite being crap. And You Got Me Feeling by Parcels. Yes, this is making the year-end list for 2026. I'm amazed on so many levels. Oh, and also coming up, It's There by Omob and Omnomus Hyperbean, and Stay Awake by Linny are both going to easily miss it. Only about half a win there, I will say that. But what's interesting comes in some early falls that really came out of nowhere here. I mean, you had your natural exits like Dancer by Cascade at 42, Bring Me to Life by Tiesto and Falls at 15, you can really push Beautiful Places at any time now, and I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Arrogant at 17. That last one is interesting because it seems like that one's sharply exiting really fast, and that actually translates over to some of our other falls as well. Yes, Call You Back by Leighton Giordani and Genesee featuring B-No-Rain was going to take a big hit anyways, down to 48, but when you have Vision Blurred by Cascade Sid and Annabelle England stalling at 32, and All the Things She Said by Harrison at 28, both of which have actually fallen off their peaks really sharply and really fast, despite the fact that they're actually gaining in spins. I mean, it's not a full-scale exit, but it's at least promising. They both suck. I wouldn't complain about the spins losing out even more. And it's really revealing because outside of the expected comeback of The Light by Kalina Zenz and Shift Key at 50, even if I don't really see this lasting, considering she's pushing another single with Bipolar Sunshine to radio as far as I can tell, the jumps were quite considerable. And outside of the utter garbage that is You and Me by Lucy and Raquel continuing up to 27, seriously, we're still doing this. The rest of our jumps are all absolutely welcome for me. All of the really good debuts from last week that jumped this week are welcome, with In Every Life by Audion up to 36, Fade by Alesso and Pendulum at 29. Yes, this jumped up 20 spots. Pendulum's going to potentially have a year-end hit on this chart. Seriously. Rain by Fisher at 26, Neck by Malpi at 25, and Shadows by John Summer and Lavinia at 23. All welcome here. These are all great. And when you take on Don't Want Your Love by Elenium and Ellie Goulding at 12, and Release the Pressure by Calvin Harris and Kasabian at 20, yeah, net win across the board. This is insanely welcome. Kind of makes Billboard's chart feel a bit more redundant, and even in that case, we actually have a debut that I'm genuinely going to cover in a full review. That's a good sign. But besides that, Neck by Malpi at 37, Sunshine's on Me by Armin van Buuren and Glockenbach at 39, and Two Hearts by Danielle Hull and Dua Lipa at 40. Keep an eye on that one later on. It's not the only place it debuted. But on to that debut that falls within my rules. Number 40, Folded by Kehlani. Kind of surprised that this is actually getting coverage from me at all. Look, I've been on board with Kehlani. They've been one of the most consistently interesting names to come out of the R&B scene over the last decade, and they've been well deserving of a proper hit, considering that a lot of their songs have actually been robbed or just caught between years, unfortunately. But this also feels like the sort of thing that I shouldn't really otherwise connect with, considering the slower brand of R&B is not exactly something that I'm huge on. I don't really like a lot of the old school 2000s R&B that everyone else seems to. And yet this is weirdly doing a lot for me that I really like. This is genuinely great. I mean, the production is absolutely stunning, as you'd expect, with a really nicely implemented electric guitar line that plays off some of the cleanest and most well-produced R&B production that I've heard in a hot minute. I was really impressed by this. And with Kehlani selling the hell out of the content where they have this sort of connection with a guy where they end up actually breaking up and spending time apart, as deep down they really want this guy to come back and end up folding his clothes for them back when they actually end up catching up again, to the point where it becomes more hot and heavy, and hey, the relationship might rekindle. It's a good sign moving forward. I mean, it's just a sign that they can absolutely sell this sort of love-struck content really well, and with the sort of maturity that absolutely proves why they're a force to be reckoned with in R&B nowadays. But yeah, this is one of the biggest surprise hits of the decade, and quite frankly, if this is the sort of content that Kehlani is going to continue forward with, I would like to hear more from this. Between this and Out the Window, they've been proving to be consistently strong at this sort of sound. And yeah, this is great. Really glad it's here, even if I don't expect it will last. And before we get into the other debuts on Mediabase, let's talk about the other songs that did debut here that I've already covered, which comprises of the first two and the highest debut. On the latter case, yeah, Two Hearts by Danielle Hull and Dua Lipa at 30. One of the few times that a song has debuted on both Mediabase and Billboard's charts at the same time, and the song's good, so I'm not complaining. And even better, when you get lower down, you get two surprises for me, with Just the Way You Are by Milky and MOONLGHT at 44. I'm just thrilled that this is gaining momentum across the board. And Science by Deadmau5 and Stevie Appleton at 47. I'm kind of surprised that this is the song that's getting pushed from Deadmau5 long after KX5, but considering it's a good song and it has a lot of mainstream appeal, I can kind of get it. This is welcome. But that leaves 4 debuts, all surprising me in interesting ways, beginning with number 41, What You Like by Sarah De Warren.
If you wanna meet me up, call me on my phone. I know how to keep a secret better than you know. I mean, nobody gotta know.
I mean, this one feels like a bit of an anticlimactic way to actually start off this run of singles, because really, what do you want me to say about Sarah de Warren as an artist? One of the big critiques that I've seen with this dance radio formats is the fact that a lot of the vocalists, especially the women, do sound like they blend together consistently, and I can absolutely understand why. I'm more generous than most, but I get that's a real problem. And considering that the last time Sarah de Warren charted was on that utterly tedious and forgettable collaboration with Leighton Giordani, yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to hearing what she had to deliver solo. But okay, I'll actually give her credit here. This is really credible. It really surprised me. For one, this was surprisingly all produced by Sarah de Warren herself, who actually proves herself to be a genuinely talented producer, on top of being able to deliver a really solid vocal performance, which this song absolutely has. And when it goes for a pretty damn dark and intense techno cut with the booming bass and some really dark sounding synths on the verses that build into some really intense drops, that really create this sort of dystopic atmosphere that actually works really well for this sort of dance floor driven content. Yeah, this was surprisingly well produced. I was really on board with it. And we have the darker dance floor ready hookup content, where it sounds like she's transporting me to a sort of dance floor inside the most futuristic club you could ask for. Honestly, it's a really nice vibe. I mean, I may have shrugged off Sarah de Warren with Act of God, but with this, yeah, I'm interested in more. Good song. Number 40, I Had a Dream by R3HAB and Izzy Bizu.
Then I woke up, I had a dream. We were still young, we made a promise we'd never let go.
And on the topic of names that I shouldn't otherwise be invested in, but surprisingly am, this one feels particularly weird to me. I mean, I don't tend to really like R3HAB that much. He produces his songs with the subtlety of a fucking jackhammer. The mixing is otherwise not exactly all that good on a lot of the songs. And he has the bad habit of really conforming to other people's styles rather than making his own. His unique future-based sound that he did in the mid-2010s has long gone. And really, that was my favorite part of the discography most of the time. It's a shame that it's not exactly lasted. But recently, I've actually been surprisingly on board with what he's been doing with Starter House, with All My Life in particular being the sort of song that's grown on me considerably. I actually really like that track now. So I had some interest here, especially considering he's collaborating with Izzy Bizu, who does know how to deliver a really solid vocal performance from time to time. And you know what? I actually will give him credit here. This is even better than All My Life. Seriously, that fluffy and dreaming instrumentation with the sort of ambient pads that create one of the most light and relaxing atmospheres I've heard out of R3HAB. It's really surprising they produced this. All as Izzy Bizu just floats over this mix with effortless ease as she sounds goddamn gorgeous here and delivers a really good vocal performance, as I had hoped. I mean, it's the sort of song that would have already sold me enough, but then you get to the drops where there's some legit bass presence whilst also not compromising the vibe. Yeah, R3HAB did this. I mean, it's not exactly the sort of thing that I have a ton to say besides that, and the fact that R3HAB didn't actually sacrifice the atmosphere that he was going for here to appease the mainstream, that's really commendable. So yeah, really great song. I'm surprised how much I like this. I hope it sticks around. Number 39, Going Crazy by Matt Sassari, Jack Back and David Guetta featuring AAoD.
Baby, what I gotta do is get close to you. Pull up outside, we come right through. Don't want to do it with you. You got me going crazy, baby.
And if you want to go on the list of artists that I'm surprised I'm actually invested in with their new material, I mean, in this case, it applies to most of the names involved here. I mean, I wasn't exactly the hugest fan of Matt Sassari's big hits, but I can absolutely see the potential and why others would like them. And David Guetta has been wildly inconsistent, even if I will admit that he's getting a little bit better over the last year. But what really sold me on interest in this one is the return of the Jack Back alias. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is David Guetta's techno and tech house alias that he pushed a lot back in the late 2010s, including a whole mixtape connected onto an admittedly terrible first disc of 7 that really elevates the rest of that album. And considering that it seems to be the place where David Guetta shows a lot more of his production and instrumental talent, I was at least hoping that this would end up being just as strong as those songs. And in this case, considering that this is a full vocal remix of a song that came out in late January that's already had a decent run, I was at least interested in this. And you know what? I'll give this credit too. I actually really like this. Let's go over the original first, considering the two versions are not exactly that different. With this one focusing on a very simple vocal melody from AAoD, who does sound a bit too smothered in the mix for her own good. You can barely understand what she's saying, and she just really feels more like an instrument to the track rather than an actual welcome presence. But when you have a really dark and intense tech house beat that sounds gorgeous, especially with the fantastic bass integration on the drops, you know what, I was actually fully on board with the original to begin with. Clean up some of the vocal production and it would have otherwise been great, and that's ironic because the new version, Going Crazy, ends up doing exactly that, where it's the original track but the vocals are put way more to the front of the mix and you can actually understand what Amira Eldin's actually saying. So in other words, the big problem from the original is gone now, and what do you know, it turns it into a really catchy, short and sufficient tech house cut that absolutely shows that Jack Back is absolutely a great way for David Guetta to deliver some quality. And yeah, I'm thrilled that both versions are getting traffic, and the more preferable version for me is the one that's getting pushed here. Big win for me, this is really good too. And finally, number 38, Ready OK by Marley Zan and Take a Day Trip.
You're supposed to be ready, okay. You're supposed to be. Oh, it feels so.
And finally, to end off, yep, another week, another no-namer getting a random push on dance radio, and at this point the quality with all these has been inconsistent at best. Although at least in this case it does feel like Marley Zan has actually got the sort of traffic that you'd expect she'd actually cross over, with some of her songs actually reaching over 1 million streams on Spotify, which is something that dance radio likes to focus in quite a bit on, as you can tell from their other charting songs like this. And more interestingly, it's also a collaboration with Take a Day Trip of all people. Now, for those of you who don't know, that's a duo who's been prolific, especially in rap music in the mid-2010s, ranging from some quality like Single Again by Big Sean to Mo Bamba by Sheck West. Yeah, it's been wildly inconsistent. So in this case, I had absolutely no idea what the hell I'd even get out of this. And you know what? I'm actually surprised how much I really dug this instrumentation. It goes down to a much more funky brand of house that you'd expect out of an artist like Young Franco or Cosmos Midnight. And credit to them, they actually add some really nice vocal chops and an intense and really satisfying bass line that gives it some genuine groove. I was really sold on how well Take a Day Trip produced this. This is really surprising from them. Shame it's backing Marley Zan, who, while at least having a decent voice and showing a lot of potential with some R&B leaning vocals that actually do sound quite nice, unfortunately they're all covered over by some horrible vocal effects that make her sound almost robotic and ruin any sort of personality she has. Give her a lot less vocal production and I'd be all over this, but with the vocal production, unfortunately, it does drag this down to merely being just good for me. Saved off the back of Take a Day Trip's production, which is something I'd never thought I'd say, and yeah, it is good, I just wish it was better. And that was this week, and just like I said earlier, this looks like the third week in a row of genuine quality. The fact that I can only give a worst of the week easily to Freebird by MOONLGHT with no dishonourable runner-up, that's again really revealing. Now in this case, I mean, best is obviously going to Lush by Zara Larsson, it's not even remotely close, but honourable runner-up is going to be a tie. I'm thinking Folded by Kehlani and Girl Like Me by PinkPantheress. Yeah, you guys got lucky with the dance pop appreciation this week from me. All these acts absolutely deserve it. And the fact that R3HAB was really close behind them is extremely concerning. Next week, that new chart begins, and unfortunately we've also got a debut from John Summit that I'm not remotely looking forward to covering to for a variety of reasons. Although I at least expect that we'll get a little bit more from PinkPantheress and Zara Larsson off of the back of the viral performance. I think we'd all be better off for that instead. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.